Week 6 in the books, Monday Night Football. A whole lot of field goals. The Los Angeles Chargers did win in overtime over the Denver Broncos. What is the outlook for these two teams now sitting at 4-2 and 2-4 respectively after 6 weeks? And the trade deadline heating up for the NFL. We've already seen one player on the move now. Robbie Anderson is an Arizona Cardinal. Could more be on the way? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Get those questions in on Twitter or in the YouTube comments for tomorrow's program. We will go mailbag heavy most Wednesdays throughout the season. And today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. Go to birddogs.com, use promo code Locked On, and boom, a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've got some trade discussions, some trades already happening around the NFL. More to come, potentially, even some cryptic social media stuff. We love it. Here we go. Deadline, we get social media impacting things and storylines, just as we did in the offseason when folks want to be traded. So we'll talk Brian Burns as well, who's still, as of this recording, still a member of the Carolina Panthers, and some other players that could be on the move. But how about Monday Night Football? Broncos in a tough spot now at 2-4 after 6 games, falling in overtime to the Los Angeles Chargers, 19-16, and the Chargers don't come out of this game looking great. Justin Herbert, Matt, kind of killing me in some of my fantasy football rosters this year.
I can imagine. I really expected Herbert to look like Allen and Mahomes in this game. And that's pretty pie in the sky. That's a big ask, obviously. But it seems like Denver's D is pretty good. Let's just put that out there. Surtain is a total superstar. He just eliminated Mike Williams. Didn't leave the Chargers much. They really could have used Keenan Allen. This wasn't a very good game, though. It seems like a couple of the handful of these standalone, especially Thursday nights. I've been down on the product, and why I say that was the stars, Herbert, Wilson, really didn't come out to shine. I'm looking at the box score. There were 19 penalties in this game for 240 yards. 240 yards of penalties in this game. A lot of them by Denver's offensive line. They're blowing protections. The Chargers had the ball for 39 minutes almost. Denver only produced 13 first downs. That's just bad football. Wilson, to me, almost looked shot. He had a good first quarter, and then their offense did zero. Melvin Gordon's in the doghouse, or for whatever reason.
Speaking of fantasy duds, none worse than Melvin Gordon. Javonte Williams goes down. It's like, okay, we've got all this Melvin Gordon stock. He's going to be huge. He gets 3 carries. Latavius Murray off the street last week, right? He's got 15 carries in this game. Led the way for the Broncos. And by the way, the Broncos do lead the NFL in penalties. And it's funny because you mentioned how the Los Angeles Chargers had the ball for 39 minutes in this game?
Yeah.
And they only carried the ball. They only had 24 carries on the ground.
It's crazy,
that's usually one where you're like, oh, they carried the ball 40 times and just grinded it out. That wasn't the case.
Yeah, I know you've had some Twitter issues, but it just dawned on me. Somebody asked us, who are the 5 worst coaches in the league, which is pretty harsh. And then this person said, well, you only have to come up with 3 after watching this game. The going for it on 4th stuff, the Broncos kept giving you gifts and you still didn't take advantage of it. Could you put Herbert in a better position? There's some questionable coaching stuff going on around the league right now, and I think both these teams are at the forefront. A lot of people pick these guys as slam dunk playoff teams, loaded with talent. Chargers won the offseason. Denver is all in on Wilson. it's just not going well. I mean, and that's the case with a lot of teams right now.
Just such an odd box score, too. The more I look at it here, you look at the receiving for the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson completed 15 passes to 10 different players.
Different players, right.
Only 4 players caught more than 1 pass, and only Jerry Jeudy caught more than 2 passes, and he caught 3 passes for 54 yards, had that long 37-yarder, but he was targeted 7 times. Really just something isn't adding up on offense with Russell Wilson, and you could blame coaching, you could blame the line, but when you see penalties and you see a team that's playing so good on defense and has a quarterback that's at least, above the mean, right? In Russell Wilson.
I'm doubting that, though.
You got to start to look at coaching is sort of my point there. It's like Russell Wilson's not that bad. And when you see penalties and you see, mismanagement of games and, especially earlier in the season, first year head coach, that can happen. You do start to point to, by the way, I got to call out. So a lot of people are asking, okay, Nathaniel Hackett, could he be a one and done? Could he actually get fired before the season ends? And when does that ever happen? When a first year head coach gets fired before the end of his first season? And last year was the whole debacle with Urban Meyer. If you take that out, a great one here from Benjamin Albright, he's the radio guy from the Denver area. And he answered the question. He said, 1978, the 49ers fired their head coach. This was before they hired Bill Walsh after 9 games. First year head coach after 9 games. And after he got fired, they asked him, the media asked him if he was surprised he got fired. And he said, no, I haven't been surprised since I found out that that when you get an ice cream cone, the ice cream doesn't go all the way down to the bottom.
That's the response.
It's just unrelated to this, except for the firing of the coach. But that is an amazing quote, and I laughed for about 5 minutes straight when I saw that. So, Nathaniel Hackett, don't.
I'd be worried if I was him. I wouldn't put a chip down that he's the coach next year. I don't know if he gets out of this one or not. But you can't forget, a new group of people just bought this team that didn't hire this guy. They can't be looking at this thinking this is okay. And more than Wilson deserves blame here for this offense. And it does reflect on coaching. But, so here's some odd personnel things that have gone on with Denver this year, just offensively. All the O-line injuries and blown blocks and blown protections. I was really critical of them when Javonte was healthy. It's like you have a safety blanket here to help this ailing offense. Give the stud back, a lot of carries. They didn't. Then Melvin Gordon is sitting on the sideline the whole time, just watching the game like he's in the second row. Albert O is inactive, and maybe Gordon and Albert O are terrible. I don't know, but it just seems odd that all these offensive things are reflecting on the same team. I'm expecting much more out of Jeudy and Sutton. Maybe they're terrible too. Maybe Gordon, Albert O, Sutton, and Jeudy, who we all thought were good players 2 months ago, stink. And you really should throw the ball to Tomlinson and Hinton and Beck and Boone and Washington, several whom I would have to click on their name to know who their first name is.
And Greg Dulcich, congratulations.
Good for him. He might be good.
First NFL touchdown. So maybe he does take over for Albert O. So maybe you're okay at tight end. But no, it's a great point. You have all these players. Like, are they all bad?
Right, right.
And is Russell Wilson no better than Drew Lock, who couldn't go to the Seahawks and beat out Geno Smith? I find that hard to believe. So there's almost nowhere to point the finger except for the coaching.
Right, especially when the penalties are factored in. Right.
It's either all of that or it's the coaching.
Right, exactly. So, it's probably easier to move on from the coach than cut Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, Albert O, and Sutton. You know what I mean?
Robbie Anderson, now a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Could Brian Burns, star pass rusher, be on the move next from the Carolina Panthers? His Instagram might indicate that he could be. That and other trade candidates at the NFL trade deadline coming up next. Bird dogs. I love my bird dog khaki pants. They are perfect they are so perfect for golf. And I walk out to the golf course. I've got these brand new pants on. I feel good. I look good. People probably look at me like, oh, this guy can play. And then I step up to the first tee and I slice it onto the wrong fairway. But I looked the part. And the great thing about these khakis from Bird Dogs is the comfort. they're stretchy, but they look good. You could wear them to work, go straight from work right out onto the golf course. And I picked up golf during the pandemic, so I was so excited to get these new golf pants, right? I look at them as golf pants, but they're anytime pants, and they're so comfortable. And that's what I love about the Bird Dogs. I got some shorts as well that have a liner, and you can get liners on any of these shorts or pants. And the shorts with liners, there's just all these bottoms are so versatile. You can go, I can go with the khakis. I can go from work to leisure to the golf course, and you feel comfortable and you look right in all of those settings. With the shorts, I could go to the gym. I could go to the grocery store. I could hang out at home. I could go to the pool party. And with the liners, I could jump right in the water, right? And so it's so versatile and so comfortable with the Bird Dogs. And it doesn't matter if, it's 65 degrees every day here in San Francisco, or if you're in New England or you're Chicago or whatever. Matt's in Pittsburgh, you get some snow starting to fall onto the ground, right? The outfit will fit, and you can feel good in any environment. The most comfortable pants and shorts in existence. And you can get some for yourself. Go to birddogs.com, enter promo code Locked On. They'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat too. That's birddogs.com. Promo code Locked On. One word, Locked On, and boom, a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. The most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. You will not take these things off, I promise you. LinkedIn Jobs. If you are looking for a job, if you ever have been looking for a job, and you and 800 million other people are already on LinkedIn, right? So if you are looking for a candidate for your job and your business that you're hiring for, why would you not go to LinkedIn Jobs? These days, every hire potentially feels like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster. It is super easy. You just add your job to the purple hiring frame on your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring to that massive network of potential candidates. Quickly prioritize with screening questions the exact skills and experience you're looking for with those candidates. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering high quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the biggest games, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And by the way, make sure you're subscribed up to the Locked On NFL channel on YouTube, because that is also the home of Peacock and Williamson. Robbie Anderson to the Arizona Cardinals. And it was pretty clear once he was kicked off the sideline and the way things are going with the Panthers season that he was probably candidate A to be traded. And it didn't take long. It was less than 24 hours before he was a member of a new football team. But when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, Matt, the key takeaway for me with trading for Robbie Anderson, he wasn't somebody that I thought was, going to be in the Robbie Anderson sweepstakes because of, some other teams that might have wide receiver needs, and maybe the Green Bay Packers or whoever. But I think that move really indicates how bad Marquise Brown's foot injury is for the Cardinals, and he might even be lost for potentially the season.
Yeah, first off, kind of tongue in cheek here, Robbie Anderson just laid it out perfectly for his buddies how the heck to get out of Carolina. Are they all going to do the exact same thing next game? Oh, send me the locker room, coach, and then maybe I don't even have to go on the team flight. I can get traded the next day. Get me out of here. This is a disaster. Talk about worst teams in the league. Carolina might be 32. Arizona's interesting. I rarely agree with their team building, to be very honest with you. I think this is a reflection on the Marquise Brown injury. They play Thursday, by the way, so they're just right around the corner. I assume Anderson will dress for that. I know Brown will not. Initially, I'm just reading tweets and whatnot. It sounded like Brown could be out for the year. And then what I saw after that is maybe it's only 6 weeks. There was a little more optimism, yada, yada. I think AJ Green is basically shot. But DeAndre Hopkins comes back in 2 days, which is really exciting just for a fan. And Rondell Moore's usage has really spiked over the last 2 weeks too. So, I mean, they might have won too many even with Brown out. I mean, they're in good shape.
They'll be all right. And is Robbie Anderson what the team needs? Do they need that deep threat? And clearly they think they do when they went out and got Hollywood Brown.
Right,
and
right.
With him going out and getting Robbie Anderson.
Very different than Hopkins. I mean, I'm sure Hopkins will lead the team in receptions going forward, as he should, unless he's a shell of himself and needed PEDs to be a great player, which I always think is interesting. But, I mean, Rondell Moore is a very unique wide receiver that was used almost like Austin Eckler last year. They already given him – he's actually running routes this year. But deep down, I kind of look at this move and say Carolina might just be worried about their jobs. Let's give up a pick to get another win or two this year that maybe we wouldn't have.
And clearly, and Robbie Anderson's been sort of an interesting character. I think fair to say, I don't want to say anything, bad about him necessarily. I don't know him personally. I don't know what it's like to be in the locker room with him, but there's always been like a little bit of odd happenings kind of around him, and he'll say things freely, but clearly, it's not like the wide receiver coach that he was arguing with was fired. It was Robbie Anderson who was kicked out.
Right.
Probably somewhat telling what the Panthers thought of the situation. But you mentioned the playbook for getting traded.
Real quick, Robbie Anderson was a Matt Rule Temple guy too. Maybe that's maybe the guy in his corner got canned, and then that's the landslide.
Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned the playbook for getting traded. We saw it this offseason too.
right.
AJ Brown and Hollywood Brown, and some other players. For Debo, didn't work for Debo getting traded, but Brian Burns, very interesting, Monday night posted an Instagram story with just a video of a glorious ram sitting on a mountaintop. What do you think? Brian Burns to the Rams. Is he trying to get himself out of Carolina now?
To be honest, I'm sad that I didn't bring it up yesterday because these two teams just played. I'm thinking deep down, maybe Burns just doesn't even get on the plane and just stays with this team, and because that's such a Rams-like move. They've gone out and got edge guys, or rented edge guys is maybe a better way of saying it. Guys like Leonard Floyd, Fowler from the Jags. The most notable one is Von Miller. They gave up, a second and third, I think, for last year to go win the Super Bowl. Burns to me would be more expensive than all those guys, including Miller, just because of his age. I think he's a great player. I mean, I think he's a top 10 edge defender that would be even better with the Rams, with Donald. He's somebody that you give up a lot for, and you give him a big check at the end of the day too. So I could see why Carolina would prefer the draft assets and the cap space, but it always rubs me wrong when you develop someone, draft and develop, and then he leaves and goes to be a star somewhere else.
Next, some other players that might be on the trade market, Carolina Panthers and otherwise. They're not the only team that might have some players that have interest around the NFL. But first, I want to let the folks out there know about PrizePicks. And you might have been smart to take some less than on PrizePicks projections, especially Monday Night Football, with some scoring down around the NFL this year. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. And when I say easy, it could not be easier. Entries can be made in less than 60 seconds, less than a minute, and you could be going. All you do is you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against sharks either. It's not some pool of thousands of fantasy players against you. It's just you versus the projections available at PrizePicks. For example, Justin Herbert passing yards, more or less than the PrizePicks projections. Russell Wilson passing yards, right? Melvin Gordon rushing yards. It's super easy and a whole bunch of fun. And for those of you who play year-long fantasy leagues, and you might be a little bit out of it in some of those leagues, Daily Fantasy, it's brand new for you. It is a new season every single day, no matter the sport, not just NFL projections at PrizePicks either. NBA, Major League Baseball, college sports, combat sports, motor sports, you name it, you can find the sport Daily Fantasy made easy at PrizePicks. All you got to do is download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play Daily Fantasy Sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50 more to play with. Don't forget, enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. It feels like the likelihood for Brian Burns is pretty low because what it would take, and the Los Angeles Rams don't have a first-round pick for all those reasons. Christian McCaffrey would be the similar story, right? Do you think of the star players on the Panthers, McCaffrey or Burns is more likely to be traded? Because with McCaffrey, there's so much good money with McCaffrey that makes things difficult. An acquiring team, though, doesn't have to take on that money, but they might. The report of multiple firsts. I mean, the Rams can't do that because they don't even have first this year. It'd have to be pushing more multiple firsts into the future. Would they do that for a running back? Might want to do it for a pass rusher, but Brian Burns' contract is still to come with that big deal, whereas McCaffrey's already signed his big contract. So contractually, things are very different with those two players. But both stars, I would assume Burns is much more valuable to NFL teams than Christian McCaffrey.
I assume so. I mean, McCaffrey probably has 2 good years. Realistically, he's not bad to trade for contractually from what I understand, but it really hurts you dead money wise. I think players like him are very valuable to new young quarterbacks. I know I was bringing it back to the Steelers, but when the Steelers drafted Najee, I didn't love taking a running back in the first round, but said, well, next year there's going to be a rookie quarterback. It'd be nice to have a guy in place, or Breece Hall the year after Zach Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a young quarterback, a do-it-all type running back, I think is a nice safety blanket for that guy. And I'm thinking about Corral or next year's first-round pick. If you had McCaffrey in place, boy, that would make a transition easier for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whomever. So I think there's some value there. I'm not avoiding your question, but my hunch is, they can ask for 2 firsts all they want for McCaffrey. There's no chance anyone pays that. I think the best return they could possibly get for McCaffrey is an extremely, extremely late first from like the Bills or the Chiefs or some stud team that's pushing all their chips in the middle. And to me, I guess I'd take the 32nd pick for McCaffrey because he's a running back and we need everything. But you're going to get more for Burns. Burns to me is maybe a first and a third from any team. I could probably make the argument for 15 teams that would want Brian Burns.
Brian Burns is more valuable than I think Jamal Anderson was a couple of years ago when he got 2 firsts. Right. So
yeah, but that was a terrible deal. I'm not sure anybody would have done that. But yes, he's definitely more valuable than Adams.
And if he wants out, and that's sort of the thing that could be a catalyst to it, because if you are the Panthers, you're probably like, okay, we don't even want to trade Burns. He's not on the block. McCaffrey, okay, but super high return. And then maybe you start to come down on some of those things. But if players want out, then do you start to look at those things? And then if you're ownership, you're like, wait, these are the guys that are selling jerseys, and I'm going to fire
good players.
I'm going to fire my GM anyway. So do I need to fire him now to take control of the situation? Because I can't have my star players getting traded out of town. So now there's like this all dichotomy of new head coach or interim coach, GM. Does he still have a job next year? Ownership. It starts to get very convoluted with some of these trades.
Yeah, and with all respect to DJ Moore and Derek Brown and Shaq Thompson and JC Horn, is that who you're putting on the billboard? You know what I mean? Like,
true. And could teams come calling for those guys? And that's supposed to be the young nucleus. I would assume they wouldn't want to trade the young players now. But does Dante Jackson? I could see him being somebody.
Sure.
A veteran player. I think that's the easiest one to trade, is a veteran player who's not a star player that a team could come calling for. But the young nucleus, Derek Brown, are you picking up his 5th-year option? Could you trade him to a team that's defensive tackle needy because you're not putting him on the billboard more likely? JC Horn, I would be shocked if he would be someone that they would want to trade. But interesting. There's a number, Taylor Moton, offensive lineman. A lot of teams need offensive linemen around the league. DJ Moore just recently signed. So contractually, these big contracts, are they that hard to move? And so it starts to get very difficult. That's why the NFL trade deadline usually kind of goes with a whimper.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I don't know. Big picture thinking, Panthers aside, I'm not a fan of really tearing it down. Like the Browns got rid of anyone that could play, 5 years ago or whatever. And, Miami trades Minka and Tunsil and all those guys and was trying to be the worst team in the league. I think that's terrible, to be honest with you. Culture is so important. Sending that message and getting rid of leaders, to me, is not a formula for winning in this league.
Especially, so like the weirdest trade I think so far this year was CJ Gardner-Johnson, who got traded for a 6th round pick. Like, this is a young guy who has a lot of football left, is an impact player.
Good player.
Maybe not a huge impact position, but, middle of the field defender. Nice interception last week for the Philadelphia Eagles. They got him for a 6th-round pick. So young and cheap, like no brainer for the Eagles to go trade a guy like that. That doesn't make you better if you're the Saints getting a 6th-round pick for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You might as well ride that out, let him go into free agency and get a comp pick that's probably higher than a 6th. So trades like that don't make sense. And if I'm calling the Panthers, that's what I'm trying to get. It's like, hey, here's this late day 3 pick. Are you just looking for picks? And I'll take some players that can help me out right now. That's what I'd be trying to do if I was another team. And so, I'm not calling the Panthers like, hey, here's all my 1st-round picks.
For McCaffrey, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the only teams that make sense for McCaffrey are the Chiefs and Bills, or some elite team that I can't think of. I mean,
maybe the Rams.
Maybe the Rams.
The thing about the Rams is that's kind of their MO, and we shouldn't be
right.
shocked if they did go get somebody like Christian McCaffrey or Brian Burns, and they're trying to trade their own running back in Cam Akers, who right now. That's the type of player that maybe they get a 6th or a 7th. I have a feeling they're just gonna have to cut Cam Akers.
No, I agree. I don't think people are beating down the door for his recent tape.
Right. There's been some other names out there that could potentially be on the trade market that are not on the Carolina Panthers. Any names that you find interesting? Maybe a Brandon Cooks getting traded once again. Cleveland Farrell's been a name I've seen out there. I've seen a couple Raiders names out there with their poor start to the season. Any names jump out to you as potential trade targets for teams around the NFL? Roquan Smith, another one for the Bears, who's that's kind of been out there for a while since he hasn't signed that new deal that they've been trying to do since the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not having a great list. I'm pulling up an article off ESPN and try to steal off them a little bit. There have been some Raiders, guys like Cleveland Farrell, Jonathan Abram, just more bad 1st-round picks during the Gruden regime, but you're not going to get much in return for those guys. Gesicki's a guy we talked about off the air. I mean, he's coming off a good game, but he's nothing like George Kittle. You know what I mean? Like, he never fit in this offense to me. I could see teams have an interest in him. Oh, here's one of the more interesting ones to me is William Jackson III from Washington. I mean, it sounds like there's a legit chance he could move, and he's kind of expensive, but he's a good player. It's still in his prime. Washington's not going anywhere. I would have some interest in that. My Steelers have been talking, Chase Claypool and Mason Rudolph are 2 names that have been bounced around in this neck of the woods, but you're not going to get a ton for those guys.
Claypool, I think, is one of the top targets to me. And we talked about this in the offseason, remember? And actually, I think you had an idea of Claypool to the Bears, who need that wide receiver help. You've got George Pickens ready to be that guy in that offense for the Steelers. And if the Bears think they can't get a deal done with Roquan Smith, that was, one of the potential swaps there. But I could see a lot of teams come calling for Chase Claypool. Could be a lot more valuable for your team than he is right now for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, maybe you get a 3rd-round pick for Claypool. Does that sound rich? I mean, maybe a 4th and something in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and so probably offer a 4th, and I think you get that value back for your current team, even if he's not a long-term fixture for your team. Like, he's an NFL player right now. He'd be a starting wide receiver, and some teams could probably use that.
Yeah, and the logic behind moving him is they just gave Deontay a big contract. They already know they're giving Pickens a big contract as soon as that day comes, and they don't have the 5th-year option because he's a 2nd-year guy. So they're not going to pay the dude in the middle. And they also are really excited to get Calvin Austin back, which should be happening very soon. Yeah. And this team will pick a 3rd-round receiver next year who will be pretty good.
Yeah, they're a wide receiver factory somehow. Those Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, good stuff. Hit us up on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL for tomorrow's mailbag episode. Who do you think is the most likely player to get traded before the deadline? And we appreciate you making us your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you stay right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where your team is covered no matter the sport. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.